How's it going, everybody? This is Cameron White with White Light Astrology, giving you guys your June 2019 horoscope for Taurus, Sun, and Rising. Thank you guys so much for being here and liking and sharing and commenting and subscribing. I love and appreciate every single one of you. And we're starting June off with the new moon in Gemini happening on June 3rd in Taurus. This is happening in your second house. When you have a new moon, it's when you have both of the luminaries in the same sign. It's a good time to reset your intentions, kind of clear out the energy, get level-headed about things. And with this happening in the sign of Gemini, about communication, about ideas, which is about, Gemini is kind of like just about getting the message across, having new ideas, thinking different ways, connecting different dots to different places. With this happening in your second house of money, physical possessions and items, values, this is going to be a really big, not a big time, but just a time to really look at where your money's at, what it's connected to. This may bring a new opportunity for money. This may bring, some new stuff that you may own, or maybe you're wanting to get rid of all the stuff that you own and you want to do a spring yard sale. This is also a really good time to do that as well. Moving forward on June 4th, we're also going to have Mercury enter Cancer. And as Mercury, the planet of communication, our mindset, how we think and how we vocalize our thoughts, Mercury going into the sign of Cancer, which Cancer is all about, of course, trust, empathy, nurturing, being maternal, wanting to protect. This is going into your third house of communication and expression, of, your ability to do things and how you do things. The third house also has to do with siblings and neighbors, short distance travel, things within your more immediate proximity. With Mercury entering Cancer and going into your third house, this is kind of like the time to more focus on Mercury, of course, communication, Cancer being needs. It's like what needs to be said and what needs to be addressed. And with Mercury being kind of our mindset and how we think, and this being in the third house of, how we really utilize ourselves, this is going to be a time to really look at, what do you not necessarily what do you need to do, but what do you need to utilize? What do you have with your abilities? And, what do you have and when do you need to use it? Why do you need to use it? When do you need to use it? And all of that kind of stuff. Then as we move forward onto June 8th, that's when we're going to have Venus enter Gemini. Now, Venus, of course, the planet of love, value, money, relationships, sex, indulgence, all of the fun things. As she enters the sign of Gemini, she's looking for more of mental stimulation, newer ideas, fresh things that sparkle and that glitter that can really catch the Venus's attention. And while Venus is going into Gemini where she's looking for something new, looking to place value there, Venus is going into your second house of money, of finances, again, of what you own. And so this is definitely going to be a nice boost for money. Maybe you might find some new ways to earn money or make money, find a different source of income. Venus also being in Gemini, this may be a time where you want to spend a little bit more money, either socializing, being with your friends, so on and so forth. Venus, however, going through your second house is definitely positive. I think what's going to be the most positive about it is that while Venus is in Gemini, this is a good time to really go towards things that are going to pique your interest, because because within those things you'll find more and more opportunities for that Venus transit through your second house. But then as we move to June 12th, that's when we're going to have Mars conjoin the North Node in Cancer and oppose Saturn, which is a pretty big deal. Mars has been in your third house for quite some time now in Cancer, and we talked a lot about this in the May horoscopes, how Mars is in its fall in Cancer, and that this is going to be the time where if we can act and we have the energy to, it has to be out of necessity, and it has to be focused on protecting and defending what our basic needs are. And as the North Node is also in Cancer, we have Rahu, the dragon's head, wanting to consume, and we're hungry. We're wanting to go in that direction of protecting, of nurturing, of caring for, of empathizing. Mars being on top of that North Node, it's kind of like having to go in that direction even though you may not think you have what it takes. And that sounds a little counterintuitive because Saturn is in Capricorn right now and Mars is going to be opposing Saturn. And Saturn being in Capricorn retrograde next to Pluto in the South Node, this is in your 9th house. You could feel a lot of things that are out of your control are limiting you. And this is coming from that 9th house place of maybe far distance travel, higher education, spirituality. While Mars is in Cancer it's in Cancer in your third house, where you're kind of having to act on what you know based off what you need. While Mars is on top of the North Node, this is kind of going more in that direction of where do you need to protect and where do you need to defend yourself at. And this is the third house of expression. This is the third house of teaching as well. And it is of learning. It's not like the ninth house where it's like higher education. Third house is more of like, I don't want to say normal stuff, but like easier stuff. I guess the best way to put it is, as Mars is like opposing Saturn right here, it really comes back down to, if you want to grow into this area and kind of release those limitations or take on that responsibility that Saturn's been handing on to you, this is going to be the time to really act out of necessity on the things you know that you know how to do and that you know how to do well. And then the next thing, as we go on to June 15th, a few days later, we're going to have Mercury conjoin the North Node in Cancer, as well as oppose Saturn. And as Mercury's still in Cancer, where we're communicating out of, again, empathy, we want to be, relatable, we want to trust, we want to feel. Mercury being in Cancer, it's going to be a time of communicating, basically saying what it is that you need to say. And as Mercury goes on top of the North Node, this is going to be, I've been saying this on all my other horoscopes, but this is kind of like, act first, think later. Shoot first, ask questions later. And as Mercury goes on top of the North Node, this is when to ask those questions. And I think while Mercury goes on top of the North Node, this is where our the image or the visual that we're looking for, that we need when it comes down to what our needs are and what direction to go with. As Mercury conjoins the North Node, this is going to become a lot more clear. Mercury will be opposing Saturn exactly on June 18th as well. And this is going to be kind of like, sometimes the truth is a little heavy. However, this is going to give us a better image and a better visual to work with moving forward. Also on June 8th, we're going to, June 15th. I don't know why I even said 18th. On June 15th, we'll also have the full moon in Sagittarius. Now, this full moon is happening in your 8th house, and the 8th house is all about death and transformation. It's about, hidden things. It's about taxes, governments, rules, regulations, other people's money, what other people have, inheritances. And this full moon, a new moon is kind of like focusing the energy on one place to get yourself grounded. The full moon is lighting up an axis and bringing a lot of light to things that aren't always shown. And this full moon is lighting up the 8th house for you about, other people's money, other people's resources, what other people have. And you don't always know what other people have. Like, you can't see in people's pockets. You can't know what exactly that they have with them. And this full moon in Sagittarius, it's kind of like, after we kind of get clear on what our needs are and we're communicating what our needs are and acting upon that, this full moon in Sagittarius is kind of like, now that we have our needs met, we get to focus on kind of filling in a new story and writing a new story. And with this happening in your 8th house, this is kind of like, as you go along, as you're transitioning and as you're growing, grow it. And, the 8th house is a scary place. And this is just a full moon. It's just lighting up things here. So you're going to get a look at this area of, death and inheritances and taxes and all that stuff. And this is kind of looking at, what's going on in this area of your chart. Where is this being, not only problems, but what good things are being highlighted here. And what does that mean for you as you move on? Then the next thing that we have going on in June is on June 21st, we're going to have the sun enter Cancer, and it's going to be going into your 3rd house. As the sun enters Cancer, this is when the main theme of the 3rd house is going to be more prevalent. However, on June 21st as well, we're going to have Mercury entering Shadow. It will later retrograde in Leo. However, as Mercury enters Shadow and it's in your 3rd house, this is going to be a time to really pay attention to, maybe miscommunications or maybe ideas that you have or something that you want to do. Because regardless, you'll probably come right back to it, and it's probably going to take a little bit longer than you thought, or the problems might drag out a little bit longer. This is a Mercury retrograde that we're talking about, so it's not like big life stuff, but Mercury's the messenger, so you could get handed a pretty big letter. However, as Mercury starts to enter Shadow in your 3rd house, this is just going to be the time to pay attention to that mercurial stuff in your 3rd house, like maybe a miscommunication with your siblings or your neighbors and so on and so forth. And then the last part of June, on June 26th, we're going to have Mercury enter Leo, where it will station retrograde. And I'm going to do a whole video about the Mercury retrograde too, so don't worry about that. But as Mercury enters Leo, where it goes from Cancer, where it's like, we have to say what we need to say, Mercury going to Leo is like saying what's on our hearts and, not being afraid of speaking how we feel and being passionate about that. And as Mercury goes into your 4th house of the home, the family life, your parents, your living situation, this is where, Mercury being in Leo in the 4th house about to go retrograde, you may find some miscommunication and you may be a little bit loud in that family area. However, Mercury also being in Leo going into the fourth house, maybe a good time to focus on what needs attention in that fourth house area, because this is Leo, this is solar qualities, this is very much self stuff. And that's what's kind of going on in June. June is going to be a pretty rough month because Mercury and Mars are going to be opposing Saturn, and it's kind of intense, it's kind of a lot. However, this month is mostly going to be focused on getting our needs met and focusing on what that actually looks like, what it looks like taking action on them, what it looks like in theory and in practice. Later on, as we get to July, August, and September, it'll be more focused on the want aspect of things. However, this month is really like, we're going to get handed some serious fucking cards, and we got to do what we got to do. And I think that's what it comes down to for this month. But with that being said, thank you guys so much for watching and liking and sharing and commenting and subscribing. I love and appreciate every single one of you, and I'll be seeing you next month.